Hello everybody. If you've watched some of my other videos, then you might know that the layout that I show in most of my videos isn't a permanent layout. I've designed it so that it divides into 3 sections that are all pre-wired so I can easily assemble them, and then, after it's assembled, I can add all of the accessories, buildings, and so on. I have a video that's dedicated to that process. I'll put the link to that video in this video's description if you would like to view it. For a modular system that has to be torn apart and stored away about half the year, I'm pretty satisfied with how it came out. But as with all model railroaders, I'm always looking for things to change. I'll be putting the layout away soon, so before I take it apart, I thought I'd show you a few things I've been working on. They are still in pretty primitive shape. I live in a part of the world that gets very cold and snowy in winter, and since my unheated garage is my primary workshop, I'll have to wait until spring or summer to finish them. But I can still work on some templates so I can get measurements and other information that I'll need later. The first addition I want to show you is this little side table that I added. This is necessary because of this Guilford station that I purchased. I featured this in a few other videos. I knew when I bought it that I didn't have a space for it on the layout, but I figured I could come up with some way to fit it in, and this small extension to the side of the main table is how I did it. This siding also includes a few other things that are either new to me or that I've had stored away because I didn't have room for them before. This warehouse is something that I've had packed away for quite a while because it takes a lot of space on a layout, so this new area gives me the perfect place to use it. This Plasticville house is a recent purchase, and as you can see, I'll have to order a chimney for it. I'm also using a recently purchased post office in this area. I'm using a recently purchased switch tower in another part of the layout, and I also have this metal tunnel that I also recently purchased but am not using on this layout. The post office, tower, and tunnel are all items that my dad had on his layout when we were growing up. I have the trains and other items, but for some reason these 3 pieces disappeared. So I was really glad when I found these identical items in antique stores for very reasonable prices. They're missing a few parts, but hopefully I'll round those up over time. I also added this firehouse to the layout, and I just purchased these street signs, the Tootsie Toy Tinker Truck, and the Marks street light. I know the street light is larger than the 1/64th scale we use for American Flyer, but I really like it, and it fits in well where I'm putting it. Back to this siding. In this picture, the silver bullet is on the main outside loop, and the 2 tracks to the left are sidings. To get these sidings to fit, I had to make a change to the switches. I saw this alteration featured in a video several years ago. In this picture, you can see how I took the rails out of their normal slots and moved them closer to the main track. This requires some adjustment to these tracks, but they can be restored to their original positions pretty easily if necessary. These pictures show all 3 of the switches on those 2 sidings, and all 3 have that modification. This modification saves me 1.5 to 2 inches, which is really vital to getting everything to fit. I really need to leave room to get around the table, so saving space is essential. I have 5 other switches on this layout, and none of those are modified. This short clip shows a 290 Pacific pulling New Haven passenger cars over the first siding and then backing into the second siding to put the 735 passenger car in place by the Guilford station. I'm showing this to demonstrate that trains go over the altered switches with no problem. The backdrops that I have behind these buildings were painted by a former coworker. They were actually painted for a Western layout that I use with my Franklin set, so they don't really match this spot, but I'm satisfied with them for now. I have another friend who's a very good artist, so I'm going to see if he'll do some special backdrops for me specifically for this area. By the way, the Plasticville train station that you see in this area is from my dad's set and was purchased in the 1950s. This is another change I'm working on. Until now, this elevated track was a simple loop. I can put S-gauge track on it, but I have two pre-war American Flyer O-gauge trains that I prefer to feature on this loop. I've been considering enlarging the loop by expanding it to run behind the erector set power plant, but I really like this bridge and stonework, so I didn't want to lose those. I finally decided to do both. I put a shelf behind the power plant to support the track, and I now need to get some switches so I can run either train while the other sits out of the way. The new larger loop works as it is now, but I need to provide better support for the shelf before I finish. Since my layout is modular, then I made sure to design both of these additions so that they can be easily removed and reattached. I also added some lighting, but I'll leave that for another video. So what are some other ideas that I'd like to work on in the future? Well, for one thing, like I mentioned earlier, I'd like to have that artist friend paint some more backdrops for me. He's also a very good photographer, so maybe I can have him take some detailed, professional quality pictures of scenery that I can turn into a slideshow. And I have more buildings, including this Plasticville cabin and fence, this Ertl farm, and this Ertl farmhouse. I'd like to find a way to incorporate these items. Perhaps I can build a raised area behind the power plant and have them on that level. That'll be a bit of a project, so I'll have to think that through some more. For future videos, after I posted a video about an American Flyer hump yard, I found out that a friend of mine who has worked in the rail industry for many years worked in an actual hump yard earlier in his career. He's trying to set up a tour for me so I can see a real hump yard in action. If he gets that arranged, then I hope to do a video about that, so wish me luck. So I want to close by thanking all of you who watch my videos and leave so many wonderful comments. I enjoy sharing these videos and I appreciate all of the feedback.